Right.
Well, it's a little after 9. We're going to call the South Bama Water and Sewer Authority Finance Committee meeting to order. Well, we already had a few opening comments by our Finance Committee members. Do we have any comments towards maybe from the 2 weeks ago? Or you got any comments that you might have seen through the agenda? Anything you want to bring up? Well, or we'll start. We'll go ahead with the team introductions. Any thoughts?
I'm hoping that we can all come to a middle ground or an agreed level on all the issues we had from the first one in this meeting. And I'm glad that we do this with a small group because it makes it easier than to present everything to the board. It's easier on our staff and executive director and finance people, and it's easier on Crystal too. So I'm grateful that we have this committee to kind of work out the kinks before we present it to the board.
Right.
And thank you, Vicki, for chairing it.
Oh, you're welcome. Jimmy, do you?
No comments.
How about you?
No comments. I'm ready to get started.
All right. Well, let's do it. So we got team member introductions. I think we know everybody here.
Very good. Very good. Just one note, Priscilla Adcock, our HR manager, will not be attending this morning due to a family emergency. So we will handle any questions that you have regarding HR.
Okay.
We'll come up through the document here. So, well, good morning and thank you for joining us this morning for the Finance Committee meeting. We're scheduled from 9 to noon. This morning, this is our second committee meeting in preparation for our draft budget. We hope to reach the goal of presenting this budget to the entire board at our May board meeting. We'll see how we do today in this meeting and all the outcomes of that. I would like to jump into item number 4, the goals for today's meeting. And we have today for our fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget. The goal is to respond to the questions and comments from the Finance Committee members regarding the proposed FY 25-26 budget, and to obtain the Finance Committee's recommendation on a final draft FY 25-26 budget. Additional goal for today for an additional topic regarding PFAS mitigation construction proposed funding is to provide the Finance Committee members with a brief overview of the tentative debt funding costs associated with the future PFAS mitigation construction project. So I provided for the board members, Finance Committee members, a packet of information that you have in front of you. In addition to that, you will find in your packet there are some additional handouts for you. So during our presentation, we will reverse those handouts that you have, which they put inside the agenda packet. We also have for you a copy of the fiscal year 25-26 schedule of the fees and charges, draft with your desktop as well for your convenience. Moving on to item 5, proposed fiscal year budget review. We have 3 items for you this morning. We've got the budget message, the budget ordinance, and the budget checklist. So the budget message and the budget ordinance are basically carryover documents from the previous meeting. So nothing has changed in these documents except for the date for today's Finance Committee meeting. And the budget ordinance has not changed, even though there were some recommended changes on section 3. We can discuss that later this morning as well. But just want to let the Finance Committee members know that these are just kind of carryover documents from the previous meeting. In addition to that, in case you don't have a copy of the previous meeting's agenda and packet, I have extra copies here today. So if there's a reason to look back to the previous meeting, I can provide you with a copy of that document as well. But I think our agenda packet today should be pretty complete for all of our discussions. So item C, 5C, I'll just mention the budget checklist. So as I was putting together my own checklist for everything that we talked about during these meetings, I found it handy just to have a checklist to go through all the items so that we could basically have conversations about those items and also to check off everything that we talked about related to this budget. So I thought it was beneficial. This is kind of our first time for a Finance Committee meeting is to actually have this checklist that's presented to the Finance Committee members and gives us an opportunity to walk through all of the items this morning and have discussion and then concurrence so that when we get to the end of that checklist, we can say we did discuss these items And we've made some edits. This is what we understand. And this is how we will move forward with a potential recommendation from the Finance Committee. So that's kind of our layout today that we have for these items. So again, we've got the budget message, 5A, 5B, we have the budget ordinance, and we have C, the budget checklist. So before I move into A, B, or C here, I just add the committee. If you like to review the budget summary, the budget message that we've reviewed at previous meetings, be happy to review that. Most of the information found in our checklist is also contained within that document.
I wanted to talk a little bit about under the key payroll and benefits expense elements, the wage adjustments. I understood at the last meeting that everyone didn't get a COLA and everyone wouldn't get a merit raise, so they would get one or the other. That's what I understood at the last meeting. But my understanding of the salary range, if everyone doesn't get a COLA, you decrease the midpoint of the salary range. And if no one gets a merit raise, of course, your salary range doesn't continue at the top. It doesn't extend out. So if we didn't do the COLA for everybody, I think that would be off balance in the future and might have to play catch up on the range. Is that the way you understand it?
That is correct. That is correct. And we discussed at the previous meeting that providing a COLA lifts the entire schedule up, including those that were identified through different classifications and steps that need to be moved up and changed somewhat from the pay and classification study. And we'd take that entire schedule and move it up and keep us on track or in pace with the competition around us as well.
Right.
Which is an important factor. The only thing I'd like to separate from that would be the merit. That's a package that kind of sits on its own because it's an annual evaluation. That's based on employees' performance.
Right.
And then based on their performance level, there's an associated formula that calculates a percentage increase for them. So you have, in essence, you have a COLA or a schedule change this year that kind of lifts everyone up to a position. And then in addition to that, you have an opportunity for those same employees through their merits to get an additional percentage on top of that base schedule adjustment. So just want to make sure that you understood that the two are not really commingled.
No, they're not commingled.
They're separate, but your analysis is correct.
So we're talking about the 157,000. I think that was the number, right?
No.
For the employees that are, the compensation study said we had to bring them up to a certain level. And Chris had cleared up that those people would not be getting a COLA. They would get the compensation escalation, but they would not get the COLA because it would bring them up to where they need to be. And I want to make sure that we're still on the same page with that.
So if I may,
we're jumping. I'm sorry.
If we would go to page 13 or 14, and this will you'll help us with that.
Oh, it's 85,000.
Okay. So I think this is I guess a good place to start here on the top of page 13. We talked about wage adjustments. So you can see at the top of the page, a little checkbox there, post 3% increase for merit and up to 4% performance merit increases for employees determined by annual performance reviews. And we scrolled further down the page to the compensation study update. We have a pay classification study indicates that using time and position adjustments results in a projected net total increase of $85,000. Is that the number that you were?
I think that's the number that I was talking to. Yes, I thought it was. But those people that come up on this classification study that we bring up, they will not get a COLA on top of that.
No,
because that'll throw it back out of balance.
That's right. It's the whole schedule. It's a combination for those folks who did that as well.
Okay. Is that clear as mud?
A little bit.
I'm sorry.
indicates that using time in position. You said, didn't we say we had was it a study last year?
2 years.
Map
That we're-
study?
2 years? The compensation study?
We just completed this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in
This
the
year.
third year.
No.
Or this is the
we
first
just
year?
completed.
Okay.
Yeah, we just completed that study. There was a,
Creedmoor's in the third year. I keep getting.
Okay.
there was a question or comment at the previous meeting about the frequency of performing those studies, every 3 years, every 5 years. Going back and reviewing the reports, we don't have to wait every 5 years. Obviously, we have the opportunity to survey that schedule annually to see what the positions are doing in the marketplace, and also make small adjustments to the classification schedule if necessary in summer falling out. Versus an entire schedule change. So we have the opportunity.
So this compensation study adjustment that we're going to make, or we're talking about, will supposedly maintain the classifications for 3 years. That's the idea for the 3-year class.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Not understanding really what the market's going to do in the next 3 years, but that would be a good target. Good
Okay.
To look at that, yes.
So, Jordan, are you saying that this was keep us update
Yes.
on the map study?
Yep. Well, that's
So we wouldn't have a large increase in 3 years.
no. Let's hope not.
Okay. Well, I just want to understand that was the purpose of
Depends
this.
on what the
Yes.
economy does over 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Okay. And just furthermore, within I'm looking at on page 13, the section regarding compensation studies, and you'll see a note below that a proposed classification compensation schedule is available at your desktop. That's part of that supplementary package that I provided to you.
What's this?
And this is what it looks like inside there. And you will see there's a highlight on this table
This one.
for grade 12, which is the utility inspector that we're proposing in the budget. So that's a new position
Right.
for the organization and new to the schedule as well. So we just wanted to highlight that for your reference.
What page is that on?
This is your supplementary information that we looked at.
What page?
Two. Second
page.
You're in the wrong one.
Yeah.
There's another thing inside.
The first page is.
That's it.
That's it.
Second page of it. Okay. That's a document we said we would prepare for this meeting.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's the official title now, utility inspector,
Yeah.
because I know at the last one we had it 2 different ways.
But that utility inspector, so we've tried to reflect that throughout all the documents.
Okay.
Updates that we've had today.
So we have to go back now, right?
Well,
We jumped ahead.
We have so that we don't repeat this. We just talked about the compensation study update, and we see a projected net total increase of $85,000. Suffice to say, is the finance committee agreeing to that section? Can I put a check mark next to that?
Yes.
I agree with that.
I did that also. Put a check mark next to it.
Just want to make sure. Didn't want to see.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you. So, we were talking about the budget message and the budget ordinance. I'll ask the committee again. Is there anything that you would like to review on either of those documents? And if not, then let's jump into 5C, the budget checklist. So please let me know how would you like to proceed.
So the water and sewer revenue, I guess this is a Richard question and Ruben question. It's just projected to go up by 200,000. Isn't that kind of low, or are we being conservative?
I think that's in the.
Didn't it go up higher last year? That's why I'm asking.
You're thinking this current as well.
Mm-hmm.
Go back a year ago.
This current, yeah.
The current year is running high according to the former presentations, if that's what you're thinking.
Yes.
Okay, that's due to a circumstance that's unique for our largest customer that we do not anticipate will continue.
Okay.
I think they have an integration problem that they're working to resolve. So that has caused a high revenue of sewer this year. That's not expected. So we did not include that in the budget.
Okay.
That that's going to be correct before
All
the
right.
first. The 200,000 water and sewer increase is reasonable. And if you recall,
We have to go way back. But back in 2019, 2018, one of our largest customers put in a conservation program.
Right.
You will remember that.
Right.
Mhm.
So we lowered and we saw that conservation go into effect for about 3-4 months. So that year when we were preparing the budget, we said this is going to hold. So we lowered revenue projections based on that because that is the largest customer. Then what happened in 2020?
Went back up.
And so it went back up. That it pretty much wiped out the conservation program for that customer. So we held for 2 to 3 years to see is it ever going to go back down completely to where it was down. We're seeing now that it did go back down post-COVID in the last, I'd say, 12 months.
Yeah.
But not down to the conservation levels.
Okay.
So this is that we think that's the new norm. We didn't want to change that in the middle of the COVID crisis because we knew that was a unique situation and we didn't know where it's going to settle. I think that we have 2 years now, kind of not truly post-COVID, but somewhat post-COVID, to where we can see a new trend. And
Okay.
that trend is between the conservation usage down here and their original peak usage up here. We think the 200,000.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay, before we go to that checklist, can I ask if everybody is comfortable with the proposed budget ordinance on section 3? Because I know we had some conversations about it.
What page are you on?
This is 10 or 14.
And if you go to page 11 in your agenda packet, I have a checklist item that talks about the proposed checks
Okay.
at the bottom of the page. And again, I did not want to presume that we would make that change on the ordinance that we carried through from the last meeting, but you can see here on screen, I believe I've captured what was discussed at the previous meeting. You can see that on the screen. Can you see that?
No.
Oh, we can't see that?
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm busy looking at my paper. I didn't even look at that. Everybody's got their screen on. Okay. Well, it'll come up in here in a minute. I can't touch it
So
either.
you'll see on screen that I basically marked through at a subsequent board of directors meeting and added in the text quarterly at a board of directors meeting, reported quarterly. And I believe that's what our discussion centered on, knowing that we do have quarterly reports that we do for the board as well. I think that's how we landed on that. Is that what you recall, Richard? That's right.
So I've given this issue quite a bit of thought since we had our meeting. And if we look at a quarterly report and we see that it seems like it's too much money and we need to roll it back, the board would have to have a motion and approval to make any more changes, to change it back. Where we would say $10,000 per month or per,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
So you're saying if
We're going to have a report quarterly to see what's going on. But if anybody on the board feels that we need to narrow it down some more, at that point, we would have to make a motion and set a time limit for the $10,000, right?
I think that you would possibly go back and that may be one way to do it. Another way would be to possibly come back to the budget ordinance and make your change here on the budget ordinance and have the board approve the budget ordinance to read as you would like to read.
Okay.
I think that's the correct way to do that document.
Yeah, I think you would have to have a new budget ordinance that whatever changes the board saw being fit.
Okay.
I think you have to adopt.
And we can do that at any time of the year. We don't have to wait for budget time to do that. That's the way I understand budget
That
ordinances.
would be an amendment, right?
An amendment to the,
You would just adopt a new budget ordinance that supersedes the original budget ordinance. The board has
Okay.
authority to do that at any time.
okay. All right.
It says within our department up to maximum of 10,000. So, we're not talking about the whole. We're talking about each individual department having 10,000.
Correct.
Have you had a need to do that in the past year?
Yes. Yes, we've done it more frequently in this calendar year, correct?
It's more frequently in this, in the last, I'd say 3 months.
So that's the best we can refine the budget. In other words, you can't make the budget a little bit more tighter or expanded enough to be able to live within the budget lines items.
I think that we're able to live within the budget. So let's take a specific department. Let's take the water treatment plant, for example. So we have quite a few line items that we do our best to budget exact numbers that we need for those areas. You will have some fluctuations in costs due to materials or chemicals. Sometimes we can't program that into our budget, knowing that 3 quarters from now that may occur. So we scour our budget to see if there's an opportunity to trim some line items someplace else, and then move that money over to that area to account for that. So we keep the department budget whole, if you will, and work with money within that budget instead of saying at some point coming to the board and saying we would like additional money outside of this department to bring into the budget for a budget amendment. So we think it's going to be more fiscally prudent to work within the budget that's been approved, even though we're moving some money on the line items to give us that flexibility, because that does happen.
Okay.
The one thing that we don't want to do, we don't want to put ourselves into a budgeting situation where we add in an extra 5% everywhere.
Right.
To cover those unexpected costs. We think it's best to have a very realistic, conservative budget and then be able to make those tweaks if necessary.
Okay.
Do you agree?
I think if you try to put a cushion, so to speak, in each department, you would overinflate the customer rates. And I don't think that would be a reasonable.
No.
Well, it's a reasonable approach, but I don't think customers would
No.
appreciate that approach.
No, I'm not in favor of that.
So we have always budgeted very tightly.
Okay.
Which means that from time to time you may need to move $1,000 from one line to the other because we have budgeted very tightly. And the other thing that say to the committee is that, within the last couple of years, let's say, you've got a lot more activity going on everywhere in every department. You've got a lot more projects, you've got a lot more changes, you've got a lot more improvements. And so what we budget today for 25-26, by the time we get to September, October of 2025, we may already know that some things changed since the budget was put in place. So that kind of accounts for the fact that we're having to do a little more in our department changes, is because we're making a lot of improvements, things not static. So to do that, things that we know are in the budget today, you may have 10 more things by, let's say, July, when you actually go into the budget year that we didn't anticipate in the budget, because our things are changing that rapidly.
There goes the budget amendment.
This happens a lot in Durham, in any kind of government, where they just move money from Jimmy's not using all of his money, so we're going to move it to Vicky because she needs it to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since this item came up for discussion, I asked in the city, and they do it all the time with the approval of the city manager. Correct. So I wasn't aware that we were even doing this kind of stuff. But, when you see somebody spending money on something, you're like, where'd that money come from? Oh, we just moved it from here to there. I'm like, what?
Jimmy wasn't using all of his money, so we gave it to Vicky to take care of her. What she had to have.
Yeah. When I worked in Durham, we had $85,000 get taken out of our account. And it was an emergency because we were in a drought and we had to buy water from Cary. So they had to scramble and find money everywhere they could.
Pull it out of line.
And they deleted our maintenance budget.
Well, that's not smart.
Well, they came back and they went back to the town council and got more money, and they replaced the money they took, but they had to have it as an emergency funding mechanism right then.
Yeah.
So it's, we're working on a much smaller scale here.
Yeah.
So this is,
Well, I think that this reporting it quarterly and finding out what's going on is not a bad idea. I think it's an idea for us to understand.
Yeah, I understand it better.
Yeah.
I know with the town of Butner, we always get some, but it's not that often.
Yeah.
Yeah, to move money.
And
we do that.
And we are not even told when line item money is moved in Creedmoor.
You're not?
No.
Georgiana, superintendent went to pay a bill and didn't have any money.
Yeah.
That's how he found out he didn't have money in his account.
Anyway, we're good.
Right.
Thank you for the explanation.
But that's not here. That's in a municipality.
Yeah, he's working within the budget. That's the most important
Right.
thing.
He's working within the budget.
Yeah, he's not pulling more money out. Those we find out about.
Okay.
And if I can just say one other thing. I think this is a good middle ground because we're just kind of starting this. And reporting quarterly allows the board to get some insight into what we're doing. So if you can tweak it if you go along the way. But there's a lot of cities and counties that don't even have reporting to the board for
Right.
transfers like this. So even our ordinance is already kind of tighter and stricter than
Most.
a lot of city and county managers have put on them. So, I don't think there's a worry, concern about it from the finance standpoint.
I'm going to give that a check mark.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm sorry we've been dancing around, but it's thoughts.
Well, no, and that's fine. And again, these are notes we would be making. At least you have this information in front of you as well. And I think we'll get through all of them
Yeah.
at some point.
No, we will.
In order.
See, they never let me jump from page to page.
Yeah.
We had to stick to the plan.
Uh-oh.
Scott doesn't like it when I
Well,
jump
I
ahead.
know. When we start at 5C, start at the top. I was just trying to get my clutter bugs
You're all
out.
day. We're happy to answer any questions. Our goal is to get the finance committee to a position where they would recommend
Yeah.
a budget so we can advance
You got
forward.
any emails?
I thought everything was when we went over last 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
We
well,
kind of
good.
settled a lot of that stuff out then, so
Well.
I'm pretty decent.
Pretty decent. Okay. All right.
So
Go
the
back.
2 water distribution system utility maintenance mechanics on page 6. That's one for the water plant, one for the wastewater plant, right? No. Chris is shaking his head.
Page 12.
I'm on page 6. I'm on page 6.
And it's 2 what?
Page 12 of your checklist. Let's go to that one.
Yeah.
Please.
Page
Try
12.
to stay with the checklist.
You jumping ahead.
As I said, there's information in 2 places. So I felt like
That's-
Okay, that's
the
right.
2 people for the hydrants.
the focus. Right. Okay. So your question is the 2 new positions. We have 2 water distribution system utility.
Utility maintenance mechanics.
Right. And 1 utility field inspector.
Right.
That's for the hydrants.
So what's your question, please?
Was the 2 distribution system utility maintenance mechanics, is that one for the wastewater plant and one for the water plant?
Water distribution. It's all water distribution.
Oh, it's only water. Okay, got it.
Yes. The committee, the board may remember last year you approved a operator, 1 for the water plant and 1 for the wastewater plant. That was our request last year. So we've taken care of those positions, those licensed operators, and this year we're addressing utility maintenance mechanics for the distribution system itself.
Okay. Kenneth, just take a deep breath and listen.
Uh-oh.
Here comes this stupid question.
That's why I'm shaking my head.
I know. Maintenance mechanics. Is that a full-time position? I mean, do we have issues for mechanics all the time, every day?
We are about probably 8 to 10 employees behind on what we need for that distribution utility,
Okay.
truth be told.
All right.
So, and we've looked at that in the demands that we're going to have on the utility as we grow. And this department is water and sewer. That's how we look at these utilities. Understaffed.
Okay.
So,
Well, and with the PFAS coming in, you're going to need more people to monitor that part of the water distribution eventually.
we'll have to see how that grows. But I think that on the planning horizon within the next 5 years, yes, you're going to see more staffing requirements for a lot of the things that we do. And if we do grow as we're projecting that's additional maintenance staff that you're going to need as well.
Okay.
Pump stations, more hydrants, water towers, sewer lines, all those things. So this one specifically we talked about really is a focus on our water distribution system as far as our hydrant maintenance, our valve exercising, those type of things. We talked about that previously.
That's the one utility field inspector. That's for hydrant maintenance and No.
Into the two water distribution system.
Okay. All right. And that's exactly what they're just going to be taking care of that.
That's going to be their primary function. I would say they'll be focused on that 75% of the time. And if they'll be filling in for other projects that we'll be creating for them as well, and also participating in our season for water main breaks when those appear as well.
Mhm.
So as the committee knows, sometimes we can have 2 or 3 water main breaks within a 2 or 3 day period. So one hand basically allow us to get those repairs done quicker.
Okay.
You good with that?
Yep.
I'm gonna give it a check mark.
Got it.
All right, let's go back at the top. Well, you wanted to start 5C.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Scott. All right, page 11, 14. So these were some of the items that were part of the budget review and the budget ordinance. Again, just looking at capturing for the finance committee, the total revenues and other funding sources, 18,870,826. And showing you an increase of 2,315,486 compared to our previous fiscal year. That information might be helpful to see that. And you can see the total expenditures as well, match your total revenues. And then we also have, third bullet down from the top, the transfer from fund balance proposed for the $1,330,076. And that was a very long list of capital items, if you will, purchases and requests. We went over that schedule of the previous meeting. We have the ability to pull up that schedule again if you would like to see that and talk about anything that was on that schedule. Let's see what else we have. We already discussed the projected rise by $200,000 compared to the current fiscal year for water and sewer revenue. The capital revenues and allocation $2.5 million to support utility infrastructure asset depreciation at 95%. No change in the 95% of infrastructure depreciation, but we do have a near-term goal of achieving 100% funding within 5 years. The next item is the interest revenue, which has been increased by $417,460 compared to our current fiscal year. So, aligned with our current projections, our total revenue budget is $850,000 for that interest revenue. In terms of the budget, well, I'll just stop there. Any questions or comments on those items that I covered from the top up until the budget ordinance, which we've already discussed?
I'm good with all of it. How about the other members?
Would it be fair to say that with the interest income at $850,000 and taking $1.3 million out of fund balance, we're technically it's $450,000. It's an effective $450,000 against the fund balance, or is the $800 no interest income is included in the fund balance? I wish it was outside of it. It made me feel better.
It's not,
I think I said this last
you're going
year.
the wrong direction. If you assumed interest income was static with the current year,
Yeah.
then the fund balance use would be 1.7.
Okay.
I think that was your question.
Yeah. So if you take the 850,000 minus the 1.7, that's what the effect is on fund balance. If we could guarantee interest income would stay where it is. I said, so if you take, if we did get $850,000 in interest income, and you subtract that from the amount of fund balance we're going to use, the total effect on fund balance would be $450,000, but it's not because the 850 is already in the fund balance. So it's a total 1.7. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
a
the page.
question.
Page 12, top of the screen is fee categories. So all fee categories have increased. FY 24-25, the schedule of rates, fees, and charges were reduced to ensure alignment with the actual cost of service. No adjustments to the schedule of rates, fees, and charges is proposed for fiscal year 25-26. You have a companion document at your desktop with draft on it. We did not present this at the previous meeting, but we provided a copy for you today to look through it. And now I don't expect to engage you in a lot of conversation today about everything that's in there, but it's a nice manual and schedule of all the rate fees that we have, as well as the definition. So I'd be happy to cover anything if you have a question on regarding that. Should that come up? Yeah. And again, that's part of our budget package for approval. So we get to that point. All right. So moving on to proposed use of fund balance details. So we have a couple of programs here for you. Our first item is the payroll transition costs, including payroll taxes, retirement, and 401k match. Total program cost is $163,000.
Are we close to getting that project completed? Richard just laughs at me when I ask this question because the original first estimate on this project was 150. And I knew that if we delayed it a year, it was going to go up, and it has. So I'm like, how much more is it going to cost us?
You're consistent and you're correct. The longer you wait, the more salaries increase, the more COLAs or merits. But it's likely to increase. That is correct.
Do we have isn't it still September of this year that it's going to be?
That's more of an HR topic, so I'll turn that over to Scott.
So as we discussed last time, this project goes into effect basically in February of next year. That's when we do the transition. So we get through the Tyler upgrade. We look at introducing the payroll software and the implementation. We close out the calendar year based on the vacation benefits that we have, and then the other benefits at the end of the calendar year. And then we set ourselves up basically, I think it's for February. That's February to make this transition so that we can roll into this payroll change in March of 2026.
So we went from August of 25, July of 25 to September of 25. Now we're into March of 26.
Correct.
Things take too long. Just since you mentioned Tyler, the billing transition stuff, I got a phone call yesterday from a person who received their notification letter yesterday. So, and they use ACH they do an ACH draft. So they're like, why am I getting this letter? And they said, at your last meeting, you said if you did it this way, you wouldn't get a letter. And he got a letter, and he's like, Seguasa's all messed up with this thing. They just don't have it right. So I said, come to the meeting and do public comment. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not
to the bills that were mailed out.
It wasn't a bill. It was a letter. And they got it yesterday saying that their account number would change. But he does ACH draft with the bank like we do at my house.
Okay.
Still got a letter.
Okay.
The account number still changed.
I understand that, but if I do bill pay on my bank account, I change that account number right. So I have to change that on my bank account. But I got my letter 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he got his letter yesterday.
I don't know.
Yeah. So let me clarify that. So we sent out targeted letters. So the letter you brought up at the board meeting, that was targeted letters to people who use their bank. Bank pay.
So
So that because that's a specific payment method, and we wanted those people to have a customized letter just for them. We did the same thing for 2 other groups of people that pay via different methods. Okay, in addition to the general information we're going to distribute to all customers, this is specific to you. So we sent out a special letter so they would know, pay attention, and that this affects their payment method.
Right.
Then in the bills, we sent out a general insert, which was in essence a Q&A. So this is the letter that this person must be referring to that they received earlier this week with their bill that addresses system-wide. Here's what we've done. Here's the changes that are going to affect most customers.
Okay.
That's independent of that letter that they got saying, all you need to do is go to your bank and
Change your account number
when you get your bill. The other is more informational only.
Okay.
And we wanted to get that information that affected 90% of our customers to all customers.
Well, if it came in with their bill as a reminder or another way of notification, I think it's a great way to do it. But he didn't say anything to me about he got his bill and the letter was in with the bill. He just said he just got his letter.
Right, and I got my bill this week, and I got a copy of the new bill itself.
Wait a minute.
And
You shouldn't get a bill. You're the executive director. You have to pay for your water too.
Have you met the finance director? Yes.
He's gonna make sure he gets that bill.
I have met the finance director
All the time, yeah.
and his assistant.
I got the same information as well, just the general information. And the goal here was to, I don't want to say over communicate, but we tried to reach everyone we could specifically several times. And overall, I think that the transition has gone very well for us in terms of the customer.
Okay.
Correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Let's pause.
I think he needs to take a break. So
Oh, okay. You want to take a,
We're
Like Mayo did.
HR General.
Signature.
yeah,
Send it to
okay. Very good. So in HR General, we have health benefits. Our first item is projected increases of 8% for medical premiums and 5% for dental and vision premiums. That 8% is less than last year's percentage increase. So we're going in the right direction this year, at least for that item.
it's less than mine at my full-time job because mine went up substantially.
What percentage, you know? Okay.
I went from paying $75 to $106
Okay.
every 2 weeks.
For what? Medical insurance?
Yes.
We usually look at increases annually. Medical usually 10 to 12% is usually what we budget. So this is a number that we
That's awesome.
have received from our suppliers. So that's good for that.
Yep.
The next item is the matching contribution of 3% for the 401k program. Staff has calculated the costs associated with adding 1% to this program, making the total contribution of 4%. So in the handout, the supplemental handout, if you're down to page 1 on top, we do have some information for that. Richard, you know, I want to walk through that. Well, let's walk you through that one.
Basically, we contribute 3% as a 401k match currently to any employee who contributes at least that same 3% of their own money to the 401k program. So last finance committee meeting, there were questions about how much would an additional 1% cost us. So in order to do that, we looked at it a couple different ways. So currently there's 19 employees, or 40% of our employees at Seguasa take advantage of the 401k match program. So we wanted to give you the cost of fully funding the program. If 100% of the employees did the 401k match, it would come at a cost of the additional 1% would come at a cost of $35,436.15. If you assume the same 19 employees at 40%, the cost would be around roughly $15,000.
Thank you.
So I do have a question with that.
Yes, sir.
I would really like how we want to take and go to 100% within 5 years
For depreciation.
for depreciation. I would really like to see that go up to 4 or 5% within that 5 years. So we contribute.
The matching you're
Yes.
talking about.
That's
Yes.
correct. I would love to see that. Does anybody know what maybe Owassa or other water, what theirs is? Is theirs 4%, 3%, 5%?
It might not be matching at all.
I think it varies from organization to
I
organization.
don't have that information in front of us. If Priscilla were here, she might have that or know that. I'm doing her census around the area. This is from my experience looking at this the last couple of years. This is one of those topics that's all over the board. There's 5%, there's 10%, there's agencies that just give every employee a 5% 401,
Correct.
regardless of their contribution. So that's how we need to look at this. So, and again, we are encouraging employees to take advantage of this. So when you say you would like to see this percentage increase, maybe if it goes up 1% or 2% or where it is, maybe more employees will participate. Again, we're encouraging them. It may be if you want to see greater participation across the organization, maybe it's more of just funding a percentage for every employee to get them introduced into the program, for example. But I think that we've satisfied the committee by providing you with the information that you requested here. So of course we're open to any discussion and direction by the finance committee on this item.
Well, the one thing I can tell you is that when I came on this committee in 2020, and Tim was still the chair, we had zero matching. And then after the first year, we had, I believe it was less than 5 people who signed up. So when I see 40% of the employees are signed up to 19 employees, that's really good. I've seen a gross increase.
Right.
So if we raise it 1% and it's only 35,000 or 15,000 if the 19 people stayed and nobody else jumped on, but 100% of the employees jumped on, it was 35.4. That's not bad.
I agree.
I would be in favor of going up 1 more percent this year.
This year.
Mm-hmm. Unless you don't want to. I mean, if you want to wait, we go up 0.5%.
Yeah, I would love to see it within the next 5 years. If you're saying 1% this year, I'm fine with that too.
That's good.
Jimmy?
I'm
Because
I
matching
agree.
is
I
big.
would like to see it eventually reach 5%.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd love to see it 5%, and you don't have to put anything in where every
Yeah,
employee
eventually,
gets 5%, which is what the city of Durham does for their employees.
That's what
Yeah.
the city of Creedmoor does. We just donate 5%. But that is to offset the Elgers retirement account, which makes no sense to me because you get it anyway. It's both two ways. You can't take 401k out before you
Okay.
retire without a penalty.
OWASA will contribute 5% of an employee's annual salary and voluntary contributions available for employees. So basically they do
They just give
5%
5%.
regardless. And the city of Durham does 5%. And, the county this year is moving to 4% matching.
Yeah.
I'd like to see us be able to do that also as a step forward, with the ultimate goal being that at some point we'll reach.
I don't know that I can ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is the average age of the employees working for us?
Oh, you can't ask that question.
I will tell you that based on our pay and compensation study that we just completed, where we don't look at that, we do look at
Years of
the
service.
number of employees and their years of service. And we have a very large majority of employees that have 5 years or less experience with Sigwasa.
That answers my
I'll
question
leave it
pretty
at
good. That lets me know.
And I need to correct something here. With OWASA, their supplemental retirement, employees may participate in a 457 deferred compensation program administered by Nationwide or Mission Square Retirement. So theirs is not actually a 401k, it's a 457.
We offer the 457 program as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
You answered my question in your.
So I think that
kind of-
I know the question really just centers on the additional 1% here today with the program. If you're looking for a structural change in the future, I think that would be something we would obviously want to run some numbers for you and evaluate. I'm not sure if this year is the year for a structural change, meaning maybe you inch up, if you consider inching up another 1% for a match, but a structural change would be potentially where the organization is funding the 4% for all employees or something along those lines. If you would want to move to that model, but we would need an opportunity to at least do that analysis and present it back to the finance committee. And again, if that's something that the committee is interested in pursuing, it may be something that we can present at the September finance committee meeting, the next finance committee meeting that we have after the budget process here. So
It's a good idea.
kind of keep
I like
keep that in
Yeah.
mind as well. Do something now within the program. Maybe consider something if you want to, a change to structurally later.
I personally would like, if I was the employee, I would rather have the match than just a deposit. Because if I put in more than 5% of my own money and you match it up to 4%, it just seems like it would be more beneficial to the employee. But you know what? If most of our people are average is 5 years of service with Sigwasa, then they're still got a little bit of time. So I would be willing to take it up 1% this year with a goal of 5% eventually, or just a contribution of 5%. But we can do that in September. Let's get through this budget first.
I'm not well versed on 401k programs. Maybe Richard can mention this as well. But employees have the ability to contribute their percentages up to a certain ceiling.
Right.
Correct.
And I don't know what that percentage is. Maybe you would know that.
It's an annual dollar amount.
Okay.
So it's not a percentage.
It's a dollar amount.
Set by the IRS.
So employees have that opportunity to put that money aside for themselves.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Yeah.
I think the census that the group that you would be focused on with a structural change would be those that maybe don't see retirement on the horizon for the next 30 years and they're not paying attention to that.
Right. That's what I'm talking
so
about.
you're able to be competitive throughout the area from our same services industry, and also start to, I don't want to say it's a forced retirement because they're already paying to retirement, but just kind of gives them a head start on that as well. Eventually, we all come around to that. We do. So
We do.
9 years and 10 months.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I know that very well.
So what I heard from the
Jeez.
finance committee chair is a 1% on the table for consideration.
Yes.
1%.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
I know that Priscilla's not here, but it's kind of like on the same subject. Do we have a turnover rate? Is our turnover rate dropping finally? Are these changes that we're making in compensation for our employees making a change?
That's a great question, Georgiana.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Because, we're jumping through hoops here trying to do this. And we got Chris, so we're doing something right.
Yeah, I love that. We got you. So
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you as someone has looked, for a job, I'm one who looks at benefits. I'm one who calls directly and says, can you tell me what your benefits are, what your 401k match are? Now, and I don't want to generalize, but there's a possibility that younger people may not look at that. And
Right.
There's a certain percentage of employees who do, and there's a certain percentage of employees who don't.
Right.
But I think when you look at it as a whole, you want to be somewhat competitive in the market. You want to make it advantageous for an employee to come work for you.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, I know that since, everybody's working on budgets, we're tearing down. People don't look at the benefit packages that come with their salaries. And people look at the dollar amount on that payroll number. But if you added the 401, say contribution, not a match, contribution, plus the medical, plus the bonuses, plus every single thing that we do, Elgers and all that stuff, I have found out in the last 2 weeks, that is a substantial amount of money. I looked at one employee category and the difference in the scale of pay and the amount of money that was on this chart. Where did $26,000 come from? What is that? It was between benefits, 401k matches, Elgers, and all that other stuff, contributions to FICA. That's a lot of money. And to say, I'm leaving this job to go to that job because they pay this much money, you've got to pay. The benefit package is important. And like Chris said, young people don't think about that. They think about the bottom line. But
you got to find a balance between live today and live retirement wise.
right.
That's what we have to balance.
And the benefit packages are usually not made. I mean, nobody makes a big deal out of them. But when I saw the amount of money that was going into this one salary grade, I was astonished that $26,000 more was going towards that employee.
Okay, so Commissioner, this is not a Seguasa employee you're speaking.
No. This is
Seguasa. This is just in general.
just in general. I was looking at competitive salaries
So
in many different cities.
all right. So when you calculate that, for employees. You use a certain percentage, correct? Do you ever recall what that percentage is?
Roughly 26%.
26%.
So for every dollar you pay an employee, I'm paying you $1.
Mhm.
So Guaso's going to have at least 26 cents for that dollar in benefit related costs.
Right.
Yeah. And it's an important part of a payroll package.
Mhm.
And I know that Priscilla probably goes over this when she hires people and, and when we advertise positions, all of this is out there.
Right.
So to me, it's as important as anything. But like Kenneth says, you're thinking about food on the table today, not 20 years down the road.
Right.
So, but it's there.
Right. So to comment on your initial question regarding tenure for employees with these benefits that we're offering, I think it would be fair to say that you would want to look at a 5-year snapshot to see how long the employees are within that 5-year period, not a 1 year or 2 year, because we do see employees that we hire them and they're gone in 6 weeks, they're gone in 6 months, they're chasing $1.
And that's
So it
that,
comes
yeah.
and goes, but then you'll hire somebody and they'll be here for 3 or 4 years. So we know usually after 2 years, 2-3 years, that employee is starting to track with us. But the first couple of years, we've been surprised. Sometimes employees don't even show up on their first day. They call us the night before and say, "I'm going to go work for somebody else for 50 cents more an hour." So we have to go through the process. So
because you can never, ever meet that. There will always be compensation challenges. Somebody's always going to be paying more and somebody's not going to be paying more. It's
our goal is
chasing your tail, in my
to
opinion.
pay to someone's experience and technical abilities, not just to compete across the street with somebody and say we'll pay $1 more. If you've got the experience and the technology or the license, and then of course we'll pay you for that.
Yeah.
But we don't like to get into a bidding war.
No.
Yeah.
Say this is what we can offer you. Here's some of the other benefits. We're great to work with. Maybe you'll accept it. There's a probationary period for both of us here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if
Exactly.
Out, so.
Well, I would want an employee to want benefits and express interest in it. That way you'd have better retention on the employee because not everyone offers 401ks.
Correct.
They're even trying to change that structure and leaving it to the employee by themselves. So I think it is very beneficial. I mean, that's all I heard all my life. Get a job and get benefits.
Yep.
But you don't hear that people talking about it. So
Not anymore.
yeah, I know. So the generation today, we got a totally different
the
type of
dollar.
workforce.
All right. So I think I understand the finance committee has said go ahead and add the additional 1%.
Yes.
Bring
I
us to
agree
a
with
total
that.
of 4%.
I agree.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Look, our benefits package has come a long way
Oh yeah.
in the last 5 years or
Yes,
so.
it has.
We've been able to add a lot to it that we weren't before, and it's helped us be more competitive in the hiring market.
Well, I just got upset that we kept losing good employees.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we didn't offer the right things.
Yeah.
But you can't always go against everybody, but at least
No.
you keep some of those good employees are staying here.
There's always going to be
Yeah.
something better out there.
Always.
And that's why I'm saying we're
Well, it
chasing our
looks-
tail.
It looks green over there, but it's really
Yeah.
brown when you get over there.
And that's what I'm
And
saying too. If somebody wants benefits, that'd be the one I think I'd be interested
I
in
agree.
working with.
Yeah.
Because they want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to put money in their future.
And if you dig into it, you'll find that at the county, at the municipal level, and at Siwassee level, we've had people that kind of didn't take a job because of the benefits, so they may not have even applied because of the benefits. But you're going to have that. You can't.
Yeah. They don't see value in it.
Yeah.
Not
So,
now
yeah.
anyway. They will when they're 70.
You're
It's
right.
too late.
When I look today, yeah,
Now, they'll think about it then, won't they?
You start thinking about stuff.
I start thinking about it at 50. I'm looking and saying, this is what I've got right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I look on a weekly basis.
Okay, we're ready.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
So just before we leave this item, Richard has a comment regarding the funding of this.
Right. I just want to bring to your attention that when we put this 401k addition into the budget, that will change your numbers on your ordinance file, roughly 15,000 as we discussed, which will
Okay.
change your fund balance by about 15,000. I didn't want you to get to the public hearing and see an ordinance with different numbers on it and say, well, wait a minute. I just wanted you to understand that, that will change.
Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So your total
We just have to remember that.
change should be
Yes.
roughly 15,000.
And the funding to pay for this will come from fund balance. Is that correct?
In the current year, unless the committee wants us to search for some sort of cost offset.
So if more than 19 employees decide to jump in, say we go up to 100 employees, we would look for a budget amendment for the rest of that money.
That's correct.
Okay.
Next year, what we will do is
You
we'll
mean
look
100%.
at participation as the year progresses and we will readjust. Quite often, you'll see this coming in June. Quite often, we'll use vacancies during the year so that we're not increasing fund balance use. We're just shifting it from, say, salaries where vacancies occur to 401k. And of course, we are basing it on participation, and that could change during the year. So you'll see one department, maybe we under budgeted, the other one, maybe we over budgeted, and we move those around on a year in budgeting. And you'll see one coming in June for the current year.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So the next page, top of next page, 13, is still within our HR general, HR benefits. We have a medical insurance out-of-pocket cap of $500 per month per employee, remains in place.
Do you see that working well?
Do we have more people signed up for the family plan?
More than we had 3 years
Last
ago,
year.
I believe.
Yeah.
2 years ago, yes.
Okay.
Next item is the wage adjustments, a proposed 3% increase to the classification and compensation schedule. And the next item is up to 4% performance merit increase for employees determined by annual performance reviews. We slightly touched on that at the beginning of this meeting, but we'll just kind of put that back on the page here.
I'm good with that if y'all are. Wage adjustments.
Yeah, I am.
I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the next three items, insurance, workers' comp, and retired contributions. A projected 10% rise in property and liability insurance premiums. Workers' comp, a projected 28% reduction in workers' comp insurance premiums.
Why is that?
On which one?
The reduction in workers' comp.
Yeah, workers' comp, we had 2 large claims. One of them partially dropped off in the current year, so our rates went down
Oh, okay.
somewhat from last year. And then the largest one is now 5 years old and drops off at renewal 7/1. So we'll go back to a kind of traditionally what was our rate prior to 5 years ago.
Okay. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And then a required 0.75% increase for the retirement system. Moving along, the compensation study update, we already covered that information. We did touch somewhat on the pay period payroll transition update, but we'll go through that as well. The bottom of page 13, the board of directors have provided staff with their input to ensure all employees receive pay during the 6-week transition period. The associated expense with this project is included in this proposed budget at a cost of $162,206.
So the timekeeper software will be implemented in the fall of 2025.
Correct.
So when we talked about the complete transition, that's still March 26th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's when we go to a pay after instead of pay before.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
The bottom of page 13 is the proposed CIP program. Just a note on this again, the 10-year CIP will be updated in July and then presented to the board of directors in August 2025 for their review. Again, that allowed us to do a fiscal year and closeout, know what that dollar amount is, and work that into our schedule and present that to the board for approval, review and approval.
So the fire department, our fire hydrant maintenance program, that's going to have to be added to the CIP because we didn't have it in there before, did we?
And the proposed program, Chris, you want to speak to that? Because I think that you managed to put it into our operating budget. Proposed budget, correct?
Yes.
Because I got 5 cans of red spray paint ready to go.
Right. So we built our budget on the proposal for 2 new employees to manage that program for us, plus associated equipment to support that program. That's built into the proposed budget. Now, we didn't go over that specifically. I think we talked about in our CIP list, talk about valve exercising equipment, some flow gauges for hydrant flows, those type of things. So if the board wanted to pull those positions out, then we would go back through the budget and pull out the supporting items for that, somewhat modify that budget as well. So that's how we built our budget. Okay.
Did we discuss with the fire departments yet at all about color and or done any research since the 2 weeks?
We've just started the conversations with the fire department, so we're making the rounds for that. We're also having conversations with the county fire and fire marshal on that, and also looking at having conversations regarding maybe a common platform for recording that information and maintenance work orders and things like that, so that we can all kind of be on the same page, and also give the fire marshal the ability to monitor that as well. So
he did discuss with me that the relationship is the best it's ever been with Seguasa today. So congratulations to that.
Yeah, we heard that in Creedmoor recently too. We met with the assistant fire chief and fire captain last week, and they kind of echoed the same thing. So.
Well, the fire marshal was actually a volunteer in STEM as well.
Okay.
So
great.
So when you did the hydraulic model for the city of Creedmoor, I think that's 3 years old now.
2021, 22. Yes.
Yeah. Why did that hydraulic model not pinpoint all the fire hydrants in Creedmoor that are not working?
Because they go out of service when they go out of service.
Okay. And there's no way for you to know that a fire hydrant is out of service until somebody calls you and tells you.
When we're notified of it, that is correct. So one of the program enhancements that we see with staffing a position to focus on hydrant maintenance is that you are now being more proactive than reactive. And that's been the case for Seguasa. We've not been proactive. So what does that mean? So you have a team that goes out and can touch every hydrant. The operator can grease it, can check the caps, can say, wait a minute, something's not working here properly. Let's get that fixed. That's how you be proactive in that versus now we get a phone call or someone forgets to call us or email us about something. We lose track of it. So it's better asset management. It works better for all of us involved that touch that hydrant. So it's going to be a big improvement.
I just figured that the hydraulic model would have pinpointed any ones that were out, because I've heard that there's several that have been out for a couple of years, and I don't know if they've ever even told Seguasa.
The hydraulic model would essentially tell you what flow is available in that hydrant, not if the hydrant works or not.
Mm-hmm. What flow's available, not what it's doing. Okay. All right.
You physically have to open the hydrant to be able to see if it works or not.
Okay.
All right, moving on to page 14, item 6, FY25-26 proposed budget comments and recommendation from Finance Committee members. We would greatly like to hear your comments and the recommendations you would have to move this process forward.
So I guess I don't mind starting.
Go ahead.
I want to commend y'all on everything that's been done on this so far. Budgets are always hard, and it's always hard to stay within budget and to keep everybody happy. So congratulations on all of that. I've heard a lot of good stuff about Seguasa. I know y'all also hear a lot of negative stuff, but I'm hearing a whole lot more positive stuff than I ever heard about Seguasa. So congratulations on that as well. Finance-wise, great job, y'all too. Keeping everything the way it's supposed to be. I always want to make Seguasa look better and make it a good place to work. So that's why I always try to keep the funding in place, whether it be raises, 401k, benefits. That's why I'm guessing we were able to bring Chris on, because of the benefits. He even said he looks at the benefits. So thank you for being a part of that as well. Last thing I'll say is congratulations. Good job.
Any other comments?
You know what we didn't talk about at this finance committee meetings, and the last one and this one? We haven't talked about the debt service. And we usually always go over the debt service, about where we are, when it ends, and what's going to replace it. We always talk about that. And we did not Richard's laughing.
Well, we have an item.
He kept it off just for you.
Well, but this is an item that we always talk about at our finance
We
meetings.
took that service out of the budget. We're not paying costs. It was a joke. Joke. You know that's a joke. But that is an item coming.
He had to follow
So
up
I'm
real
saying
quick.
it's in the chart, but we didn't discuss it at all.
Yeah.
Item 7.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's
All right.
death scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to speak to number 7.
Related to the budget, I can assure you that that service is reconciled to the budget. Okay. That will get paid. Let me just say.
Stop paying. Yeah, that works for you.
See, that was right there, a brief overview of debt
Mhm.
scenarios.
Well, there's a chart too, and it's like we didn't go over this chart.
Well, did you want to talk about the PFAS mitigation construction
Unless
funding?
Jimmy's got comments, you got
If I may,
comments.
I'd like to close out items 1 through 6 before we get into item 7. We can get a recommendation from the finance committee on the budget that's proposed with the changes that will allow us to move forward with the next steps to move towards the required public hearing, which we would schedule, hope to schedule at the May board meeting. And that would give the entire board an opportunity at that meeting to have the public hearing and approve a budget, or simply look towards the June board meeting to approve a budget. So that's really what we're trying to advance towards this morning.
I think with all the comments, and as we went through each one, everybody can speak for themselves, but I think we got a consensus that we can move forward.
And I think the only change we're making here today is the matching 401 from 3 to 4. That's the only difference. Everything we had is still okay.
Right.
Very good.
And, I think you guys have kind of made it easy for us because we've had very few requests to change anything, and we just needed some clarification on different things, different items, and I'm real happy with the budget that the proposed budget you brought forward, and I think it's very responsible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think everyone did a great job. We appreciate the teamwork and the leadership that we have. And we appreciate the checklist too. That helped go through it. And all the other information that you provided. That gave us the tools and the resources to go through it. Real simple.
Yeah.
And we had, like you said, we had little to add to it. But I appreciate the interaction between the committee members and the staff here today, the leadership, and Crystal.
Great.
She's always there to provide and make everything go smooth.
Okay. If I may, I'd just like to ask the finance team, is there any points of clarification that you need on anything we discussed today?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So we appreciate.
I'm sorry. Do we need a formal vote to move
I
budget
was going to
forward?
ask you one formal.
Yeah, I think there should be a motion to approve.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So the only other idea or the only other change to this budget that we have is waiting for a response from Jim Wren on that. That's the only other thing that can change before we present this.
That's correct.
Okay. So
What I discussed with you this morning.
Yes, that is
to get a clarification from the attorney.
that is a comment. That's something the finance committee is looking for.
Right.
At this point, but I think that you can still approve the draft budget
Yes.
That was
And have the
presented.
and
Yeah.
still have the conversation at the next board meeting once we have the information. Should the finance chair, the finance committee want to make a change to that? So let me just talk about that for a moment. So at the May board meeting, we have an opportunity. We'll have our scheduled public hearing. We'll also have an opportunity before we have the public hearing, I believe. I have to look at last year's agenda. We give the finance committee chair an opportunity to say that we met on these dates. You get an opportunity to speak towards the budget, what you approved, and at that point, you may have an addition that you want to add to the budget, or at least discussion to amend your budget proposal. I think
Right.
that would give you
Exactly.
that opportunity at that time to have that discussion. So,
Okay. And that will be at our next meeting. And hopefully you'll find out something real soon. So we can add that in there. And of course we got, well, we're almost in May, not quite, but we got plenty of time to be able to amend it. Okay. Well, it sounds good. So,
You want to vote?
yeah, you want to make a motion
I make a motion that we approve the proposed budget.
or the draft? Which word would you like?
The draft budget, proposed budget,
Okay.
draft budget with the changes that we discussed today.
Okay.
I second that.
All right. Got any other discussion? Okay. Ready for the vote. All in favor say
Aye.
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 no opposed.
All right. Thank you.
We're good?
Thank you. Really appreciate that. All right.
All right.
Next item, PFAS mitigation construction funding brief overview of debt scenarios. So in your supplementary packet, you have two schedules in here germane to this topic. The first schedule is a debt service 7 years projected with USDA loans. And the second chart is going to be PFAS project funding debt service comparison. So I'm going to ask Richard Ballmer, our finance director, to lead on this topic. Richard?
Which one do you want to lead?
Let's do the debt service. Yep.
Debt service. So I don't have it. So in your package, you have a 7-year projection of debt service. Starting with 2026, which will be the upcoming budget that we're voting on. You can see that the total debt service included in the budget you just reviewed and voted on is roughly 3.7 million, slightly about 3.7 million total. Of that, 1.7 million is loan debt, 1.5 million is bond debt, and 500,000, of course, is town of Butler, which is not technically debt, but we treat it as debt. And you'll see as we go along, that 500,000 yellow box drops in 2028 to 125,000. So to Ms. Kaczynski's point earlier, you'll see that debt sunsets. That was a 20-year debt, I believe, when the town incorporated, and if I'm not mistaken, that would mean they incorporated in 2008. You'll see also the other blocks. The loan debt, you'll see, stays pretty consistent. Why is that? Why is our loan not subsetting? Because the largest loan we have is the DEQ $26 million loan for the wastewater Falls Lake upgrades back in 2015. That debt is pretty consistent for 20 years. So that's why you'll see we do have some loans dropping off, small loans, but it's an immaterial impact on debt service regarding the loan. So that's your blue bottom part of the bar. And you'll see that even 7 years out, that's still nearly 1.5 million. The purple box is your bond debt. Now, the bond debt you'll see starts to sunset in 2028, similar to the town of Buck. Why is that? Because the original DHS loan.
That's a Creedmoor bond, right? That was a Creedmoor assumable.
This is the original founding.
Okay.
For Saguasa.
Okay.
DHS handed over the debt associated with the system that became Saguasa's debt. That sunsets in 2028. So you'll see that the bond debt substantially goes down from 1.5 million in the upcoming year to 500,000 in 2028. And that's primarily that one. We do have a couple of, to your point, Creedmoor loans that were assumed by Saguasa in 2015 when we assumed that system. A couple of those will also start sunsetting in 2028.
Okay.
So that's why you see your bond debt starting to drop. And then you'll see in 2028, it stays fairly consistent all the way for the next 5 years because those two debts sunset. The rest of them stay online, and they're, I believe, still 10 years out before they start dropping up. The yellow we already talked about, town of Butler sunset. What is the lighter blue bar at the top starting in 2028? If you'll recall, the members who have been involved in previous finance committee meetings have seen a similar chart. This is where we know that we're that the board approved up to a $35 million loan with USDA, 40 years. That is the projected debt service associated with that loan. It could be, I will put a disclaimer here, like a commercial in small letters at the bottom. That is still not set in stone. It will depend on what the interest rates are at the time that the loan closes. If the interest rates are lower, that could be less. It wouldn't be higher because when the USDA awards the loan, they say, here's the interest rate max that we're putting on there. If it's lower at the time of closing, you get the lower rate. If it's higher, you stick with the original USDA rate. So that bar is at the current, what the USDA has said they expect the rate to be. So you'll see that total debt service, there's a box missing at the top of 2027. You'll see in 2026, to Ms. Kuczynski's point earlier, we have just about $3.7 million in the budget for debt. That includes interest and principal. So we do have interest built into the numbers. In 2027, it's 3.4 million. Then you'll see in 2028 with USDA, even with the other sunsetting, you're looking at 4 million. So you will see an increase between the 2027 budget and the 2028 budget of approximately 600,000 in debt service. And then you'll see that stays fairly consistent and settles in at about 3.8 for the remainder of the 4 years on the chart. This is assuming 3.75, you'll see at the top. This assumes we're borrowing from USDA $35 million at 3.75% as a 40-year loan, which is their loan back. Any questions on that?
So 2028 is going to be a rough year.
Yeah. And we're assuming that the first payment, USDA loan payments come due June 1st of every year. So we're assuming that construction will be completed, the loan will be completed and closed, and that first step payment would be due 6/1/28 of this.
And the closing of that loan is tied to the completion of the project.
That's correct.
Okay.
So it could be 2029 should construction be delayed or something. I know, but should something happen, it could be sooner than that. It could be later than that. I don't anticipate it could be sooner.
I'm an old woman.
Well, by that time, hopefully we'll have some revenue increase. Hopefully.
Right. We will look at revenues, definitely in that year, and it have to be factored into revenues and expenditures and rates, and it'll all be looked at to make sure that we can accommodate that debt. Any questions on the debt service?
That was very good. Thank you.
He always makes it painless.
Well, I like the graph. I like the.
I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't do the debt service part. That's the big part.
Yeah, I thought they were trying to close the meeting.
We're here as long as you need it. Okay, let's talk about PFAS, which was not included on those charts. So those,
of course not.
Those are our known debts, the debts that are already in concrete, and the one that we have somewhat already in the pipeline. USDA we talked about, of course, it's not an official debt yet, but it's going to be. PFAS funding is a different animal because we haven't even determined total cost. We know roughly 26.8 million is what the number is. But, we're still early in that process. The board just talked about that in numerous meetings. You had CDM Smith giving you proposals and updates on that project. So what we thought we would do for the Finance Committee is talk about our current debt service and what PFAS may impact. So we said, okay, suppose we know that we got some grant money already to fund some of that project. But we said, let's start with 26.8 million and assume that we didn't have any grant money. Let's let the bench line, kind of worst case scenario bench line. So that's what you see on the left side of your chart. If we borrowed, these are all assuming, I believe, 4%. Yes, these are all assuming a DEQ loan at 4% for 20 years, which is a standard DEQ loan. If you went out for funding for DEQ and you got the loan, it could be 4.5% then. It could be 3.5%. We don't know, but 4% is a reasonable projection. So this is a 20-year loan, 4% interest through DEQ. If you go out to the commercial market, the interest rate's going to be higher. And you may not get a 20 year, you may get a 15 years. So keep in mind, this is a 4% 20-year loan. So you'll see if we had to borrow the whole $26.8 million, that would require almost $2 million a year in debt service. Okay, and that's over and above the debt service we just looked at. That's already in our books.
But we already know we've got $5 million towards this project.
Right. So the next line is 21 million.
Okay.
So we said, okay, let's assume we had to pick some numbers. We don't know whether grant funding is going to settle, but we know we've got 5, right? So that brings you down to 21.8. Well, we didn't want to run an odd scenario for 21.8. That's an odd number. So we said, suppose we only have to finance 21. What would the debt service be? 1.5 million. Suppose we got enough grant funding and use some fund balance. Now, that's the other option I didn't mention at the beginning. The board may say, let's use some fund balance and some grant money and minimize the impact to rates. Because make no mistake, if you fund this project through loans and your debt service goes up, we know where that has to come from, the revenue stream that has to come from. The third plot on your chart is 18 million. Let's assume we have to finance 18 million. You'll see debt service is 1.3. 15 million, 1.1, 10 million, 735,000 a year. So we only took this 5 scenarios, but of course that gives you a good idea of what the debt service could be on an annual basis. And this is annual. We didn't want to intermingle this with the known debt service that's shown first.
Right,
That's why we brought it to you as a separate scenario right now. It's not a true debt yet.
Let's see.
I guess I got several questions, and I'll start with how many homes are projected to be built today that are not built? How many have y'all already approved? How many subdivisions with houses have y'all already approved?
None.
So let's see. I'm just trying to think the best way to phrase this because it's as you know, we support the communities we work with. So we've approved maybe 150 up to 200 homes in the town of Stem with a combination of 2 subdivisions that paid their allocation years ago that have been constructed. I don't think the homes are built yet. Chris would know more about that.
That's
manages that, but there's 200 there. We have a pending 800 in the town of Butner.
Correct.
And the next developments I talk about are contingent upon completion of the Seguasa major sewer improvement project 3 years out. So there may not be a lot of new customers for the next several years, but on the planning horizon 3 years out, you may have upwards of 2,000, 3,000 homes just initially.
Your numbers I see is about 1,000 prior to us having to have some kind of money to go to the PFAS, because that's only basically 3 years out.
Got
So you're saying-
170 in Creedmoor.
Pardon me?
You got the 170 in Creedmoor, Brames.
Right. So
And that's under construction right now, and they've already got their allocation.
starting construction. Yeah, I just don't have I don't have that list of all those values in front of me, but I think that your point is that there is going to be some revenue increases
Correct.
in the next couple of years based on if the homes are filled
Correct.
and purchased and using the utility. And then there's going to be a wave once the sewer project is completed.
Correct.
So that's on the horizon.
So it may offset this to look like it's not even truly spending different than we're spending today.
Well, here's your challenge.
It's a positive outlook. I
Here's
like that.
let me sprinkle this over everything.
Got fairy dust?
I wish. We've talked to I mentioned to the board that our total project cost $26 to $30 million just for 100% installation to treat our permitted flow at the plant. So we're 7.5 million gallons per day permitted flow at the plant. We don't push that much out
Correct.
of the facility. So there has been some discussion about just financing and building to what maybe half of that, 3.5 to 4 million gallons per day. And then as the demand increases for the plant, then you can also inject some capital at that point. Some new technologies, but the technologies are changing every other day.
Correct.
And prices seem to be coming down. So there's some thought that we may be able to soften that initial capital investment. We're not sure. Keep in mind that we still have completion of the pilot program that's still on the horizon, May, June of this year. So we've got some challenges with this whole schedule because there's a lot of information we just don't have right now to have a really intelligent discussion regarding, well, what would the rates look like? Because that would be the next question at these levels. So there's some things that we have to factor in. How much grant money can you put towards this project? How much are we actually going to build? How much would the board recommend that we offset this construction with fund balance to not have to increase rates? And then keep in mind, the greatest challenge for us from a building standpoint is we have a finish line that we have to complete by a certain date. So we can't talk about, well, what does the future look like in 2 or 3 years from now when we have more customers? We'll have to build that profile in to understand how that looks on rates. But with the clock ticking for completion as we know it today, we would have to start locking in this information to start building to finance or pay as you go in this program. So suffice to say, when you look at the scale and what's going on there, there's still a lot of moving parts. I-85, the sewer improvement project, CP2 is out for bid and comes in May. So we'll finally know that piece of that project related back to the USDA. Interest rates with the USDA, we don't do a loan closeout to the end of the project, 2.5, 3 years from now. But we're locked into a rate. Maybe the rate's lower. That comes into play. But we have kind of got to go beat the clock here on the PFAS and make some decisions. Yeah, especially if you move to the design build. You're spending money right away. You're not waiting until the project's done in 3 years to do that. And I think most of you, if not all of you, have keeping up on what's going on with PFAS. Is it a moving target? Is it going to be funded? Is the state going to fund a lot of it? We won't know that for another couple of months. Are you going to reduce the timeline? A lot of information. So we want to go in a good pace. We just don't want to outrun ourselves here on this discussion. And when Rich and I were talking about this, providing this information discussion today, I said to Richard, Richard, they're going to want to know rates and what effect does this have on rates? And I believe your comment was, can we finish the fiscal year 25-26 budget first? Can we close out the Tyler implementation project? Can we then, once we do this and close out, can we start to run rate models and scenarios later this summer? Once we know some of these projects have closed out, my fiscal year is closed out, and we could put this information into rate models and then start to align these different scenarios with what the rates would look like. We just have not had the opportunity, basically because of your current schedule, to sit down and really focus on that portion. But we would be happy to bring that back to the board this fall, this September, August, September. We think that would be a realistic time frame that we can start saying, we know this, we know this, we know this, here's some scenarios. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at these charts and these values as well. It's not an easy decision because there's a lot of variables. Some are known, some are unknown.
Yeah, and variables are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, the first thing I was thinking about is knowing how much debt we could afford to pay. And have to look at the budget to see what that would look like. And then you wouldn't happen to know off the top of your head just an estimate of how much revenue you'd have with 2,000 rooftops.
I don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if you had some type of calculation you knew.
It's part of your rate model, right? It's part of the rate model we're talking about.
Okay.
You know, if we know that, we can do some true projections.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to throw in my head calculations out there, and then the rate model has
something different.
Yeah, we have, it's a very sophisticated rate model that builds in a lot of factors. So I may be giving you a bare bones number that not taking into account all the variables.
Okay.
And what I would do during this time period of developing this rate model, we would look at a table of values that said, okay, in the next 2 or 3 years, how many rooftops do you think we would have? What would that equate to in terms of some revenue? We'd also look at a projection beyond that, maybe for the next 3 years.
Yes.
Once the sewer project is completed, to look at that based on what we know is going on in the area. You can factor a lot of that into the model so that we can take a look at those revenue projections, which help then give you that picture on your what can you afford,
Right.
affordability of that basically.
I am so hoping.
Mixing with different percentages of cash on hand as well. We talked about what percentage do you want to use of that towards this project to offset that or soften
Right.
the rate increase. So quite a few.
That's going to be interesting when he puts that
It
together.
is, and if I was just recalling that when we did this 3 or 4 years ago with the USDA project, the sewer project, I think we had 5 or 6 charts that we spent a whole meeting on just looking at the different scenarios.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's pretty involved, but it's worthy of a session itself just to look at this. And I think that going beyond September, I would be concerned with that timeline. I think that we really need to focus. I would recommend that we focus on this August, September.
Okay.
September for sure. Usually August is out time due to the vacation month, summer vacations, but just keep that in consideration.
I'm so hoping that the state's going to throw enough money at this.
I hope so.
And do you think we would know something by then, September? Maybe.
If we haven't decided on the project by October, why would we want an answer in September?
State funding.
Okay.
The state, there's $110 million, I think, set aside for PFAS.
So
Now that's in the budget.
the question that I have is, once the board decides on which system we're going with for PFAS,
Mhm.
does that have to be submitted to DEQ and approved before we?
It's all part of the process, yeah.
And their response time is, yeah, you're laughing because I know DEQ is not the fastest on
3
response.
days and 6 weeks.
How much?
3 days.
3 days and 6 weeks.
So you sent us some PFAS project information about a new technology. That's the word I'm going for. That is substantially lower than what we're looking at right now. I think, and I've mentioned this to Scott already, that once we get to the point where we decide which way we're going with this, if it is still as high as it is, that we have and it's nothing against our finance director, it's just that we have a Reptelis or Davenport Financial come in and give us options on the best way to fund it. Instead of just saying, okay, well, we'll get a loan or we'll do this and do that. I mean, I just think that we need to have somebody who can look at this from a different perspective and say, you know, our thing is we don't want to raise rates. I know we're going to have to some, but that's a concern of ours. Rates are a big concern. And how much money we're going to touch out of our fund balance to offset a loan, or how deep we're going to get into this loan. So we're looking at possibly hiring a financial consultant, $20,000. So that's just a thought that I had, that maybe Richard's got his hands full. Richard and Ruben are with the technology changes and the payroll transitions.
So Commissioner, we're open to any suggestions or recommendations from the Finance Committee. Let me tell you how this works. We have a consultant come in, and the first thing they do is they give Richard and Ruben a list of 75 things that they need from them to put into their model to come back and make a recommendation that we already have basically the same information to present to you. So there's work involved, even working with the consultants for pulling all of the data to allow them to manage it. It may be a good partnership that we take a look at, with a consultant, or maybe let us take a first pass at it
Uh-huh.
for our first meeting and see what information comes out of that. And then if we feel that, or if the committee feels that they would like to have a second opinion or third opinion, by all means, let's go, let's move forward. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think that you're going to have too many options here, quite honestly. You're going to be using grant money. And what you're going to look at the scale of the project first. That's important. So if you scale a project back to reduce that 30 million down to 15 million, that would be great. You look at your grants that you're able to get, any state funding that you can get, any available fund balance that you want to use, cash on hand to put towards this to keep your rates down. You go through all those scenarios if those are your targets, and then you say, here's what we can do with these values, and maybe there's a little pressure on rates, maybe there isn't a little pressure on rates. So we can go through that analysis. When you have an opportunity to look at that, if there's more that we want to do that maybe beyond our capabilities, we'd be glad to work with a financial consultant and say, check this for us or run this for us. Or you're right, we don't have time to do that, but let's take a deeper dive in that area, or help us find that additional funding that maybe we're blind to. We're looking for it all the time. It's just there's so much information that's just moving around at federal and state levels. So
Right.
let's just consider that when we're having this discussion overall.
Well, and Richard and Ruben, if you guys feel that you need that, please let us know.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel you need it, I mean, if you've got to do all this legwork before they come back with an answer that you could give us anyway, then it's fine with me. I'm just concerned about your limitations with everything else that because the finance department is in the middle of as much as the engineering department, and you guys have got your hands full with all the stuff that's going on right now.
What would you like to say?
We went through that exercise with the 85 project.
Seguasa Sewer Project.
Well, whatever you're going to call it, I certainly actually call it 85.
All right. Okay.
But we did that, I believe, in 2018. That was slightly before you came on 19.
Yes, thank you.
So we did that in 2018
For the water project, for the water plant project.
for the I-85 sanitation sewer upgrade project.
Uh-huh.
The water project was already funded.
Yeah.
So we were looking at funding sources, and the interim director at that time thought it might be a wise thing to bring some information to the board. And to Scott's point, basically what they did was take the same chart that my debt service work model and took that data and imported it into their sophisticated model. And of course, they provided a report, a booklet, as you've seen probably other places, that's very informative, very nice.
Yeah.
It didn't tell us anything new. It didn't tell us any new funding sources. It ran the same scenarios as to Scott's point. So, and the first thing they're going to need to know is, well, what are you needing to fund? Well, we don't know yet. We may need 21 million. We may only need 10. We don't know yet. So they're going to be in the same situation that we're in. So I think Scott's point, I think hopefully by September, we'll have a little more information. We'll have a little less unknowns
Okay.
to throw into the equation. And at that point, after that meeting, you can say, well, we think it would be helpful for the committee or the board as a whole, and then we move forward with that. But I think you're premature now. I think they're going to get to a certain point and be on hold before they can give you a finished product the same way they are.
Okay.
They did tell us back then some debts that we could pay off with fund balance. I've already run those projections. We have discussed those internally. So, we kind of have all the information we need until we get to and we can provide that in any form needed by the committee. So I think it may be a little premature to hire somebody and then tell them we don't know these 5 things that you need to build into your model yet, because you're basically giving them a halfway point and saying, okay, stop until we get more information.
Okay.
That's just my.
That's all right. That's why you're there.
Any other comments?
Sit up straight. Sit up straight. I think we're good.
If you, that's just a request.
Okay.
Would you like to schedule a meeting in September, finance committee meeting?
Sure, we could do that.
For the month, and we can look at schedules. We'll work with you on schedules and availability. And so I'll have Crystal reach out and we'll look at
And she'll reach out to us.
Friday. Seem to work okay.
Fantastic for me.
Okay.
It's the only day I'm off of work.
Oh, okay.
So maybe we'll look at some Fridays in September, but that would help us hone in on what we need to do and prepare for that meeting. We'll get that on our schedule sooner than later, so we all have that information.
And the state should have already passed that budget by that, or done something
We
with
should
it.
be in a pretty good position. We'll know a lot more this summer than we do now. So, okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
I thought we had a very productive finance meeting. We went over all the details and the questions we had from last time. I think we're ready to adjourn. One last call. Any comments, Jimmy?
None.
All right. Roseanne?
I'm good.
All right. You good?
Thank y'all.
Okay.
That's my
Thank you.
only comment. That was fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Hard work.
Made
Thank
it
you so
easy.
much.
Made it easy.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.